Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Syrian activists form an opposition council in Istanbul. Israel to uproot thousands of Bedouins from the West Bank to expand its settlements. And fresh clashes erupt between armed tribesmen and Saleh's forces in Sanaa. Mosaic. World news from the Middle East begins now.
Before heading to Benghazi from Tripoli, British Prime Minister David Cameron said that NATO was ready to continue its mission in Libya and protect the civilians according to Security Council Resolution 1973. French President Nicolas Sarkozy denied that the West interfered in Libya because of side deals to share Libya's oil wealth. He called on Gaddafi and his supporters to put down their weapons and surrender.
The
Libyan National Transitional Council is receiving new support. David Cameron and Nicolas Sarkozy are in Tripoli. The two men were the first to call for the overthrow of Gaddafi, even if by the use of force. Cameron and Sarkozy brokered the UN resolution to impose a no-fly zone over Libya, and then authorized NATO to launch airstrikes on Gaddafi's strongholds. They are now repeating to Libyans what they have said outside Libya.
We will go on with the NATO mission for as long as is necessary under the UN Resolution 1973 to protect civilians. As I said, this work isn't finished yet. There are still parts of Libya under Gaddafi control. And the message, I think, to Gaddafi and all those still holding arms on his behalf is, it is over. Give up. The mercenaries should go home.
I want to say this to the Arab public listening to us. There were no kickbacks, no hidden agreements to access Libya's resources. We are not asking for any preferential treatment. We did what we thought was just. And we believe that the world does not need conflicts between the East and the West. I should make this clear so that the public in all Arab countries know that the National Transitional Council led a just revolution, and the coalition took part because it believed it was just.
The new Libyan authorities requested that France and Britain continue protecting civilians from attacks by Gaddafi supporters and cleanse the country of its landmines on the basis of its commitment to Security Council Resolution 1973. The education sector was also included in the development agreement sponsored by France.
France kindly offered to help begin education as soon as possible in some equipped schools. Britain and France also accelerated the process of unfreezing Libyan assets in accordance with the Security Council resolution.
Sarkozy and Cameron took advantage of the Libyans' appreciation for them to the fullest. They visited a hospital in Tripoli and met with those wounded in the battle now known as the Battle for the Liberation of Tripoli. The battle does not appear to have ended in all of Libya. Gaddafi is still at large and threatens his opponents at every opportunity. His supporters are entrenched in 3 cities waiting for the moment of resolution. It appears that the path to rebuild a new Libya is filled with obstacles and challenges, both inside and outside Libya.
Yemeni security forces fired live ammunition and tear gas at protesters gathering in front of the security building in central Taiz, south of the capital, injuring 12 people. Thousands of Yemeni youths have taken to the streets in a massive rally demanding revolutionary resolve and rejecting talks with what they referred to as remnants of the regime. The protesters chanted slogans denouncing foreign intervention in Yemeni affairs. In another development, the Taiz Provincial Civil Council called on the country's political and revolutionary blocs to hold what they referred to as a responsible meeting to rally support for the revolution. 2 Yemenis were killed and several others were wounded in renewed clashes between forces loyal to President Ali Abdullah Saleh and armed tribesmen in the capital Sanaa. Yemeni news websites quoted what they referred to as reliable sources in the southern port of Aden, saying that a Saudi shipment of arms and military equipment arrived at the port to reinforce pro-Saleh forces and militias.
Tension is rapidly escalating in the Yemeni capital, Sanaa. The situation has exploded as clashes erupted once again between pro-President Ali Abdullah Saleh's forces and supporters of Sheikh Sadiq al-Ahmar in the area of Hasba. Intermittent clashes also erupted in the area of Shalman, where rival forces exchanged heavy artillery and gunfire, which quickly spread to 16th Street and Sinja neighborhood. Incoming reports confirm that several homes, including al-Ahmar's residential compound, sustained property damage due to the heavy shelling by Saleh's brigades in the areas of Atan and Sabaha. In addition, several people were killed or injured in the fighting. These latest developments follow President Saleh's announcement in which he authorized his deputy Abed Rabu Mansour Hadi to resume talks with the parties that signed the Gulf Cooperation Council's initiative for the transfer of power in the country. The joint meeting parties, JMP, rejected Saleh's bid and reiterated they will not hold talks with the ruling Congress Party. The JMP accused Saleh of exhausting the political option by refusing to sign the Gulf Initiative. In addition, the JMP called on the youths of the revolution to escalate their peaceful protests until the downfall of the remnants of the regime.
The renewed clashes between the Yemeni forces and tribes loyal to Sheikh al-Ahmar are additional proof of the deteriorating security situation in Yemen, especially the capital, Sanaa, where heightened security measures are in effect. We call on the youths to push ahead with their escalation and maintain pressure on this nearly collapsed regime.
The volatile situation has spiraled out of control in the capital, Sanaa, where the Republican Guards dispatched reinforcement units and deployed tanks and missiles on hills overlooking the city. According to Yemeni news websites, in what was attributed to sources described as reliable, in the southern port of Aden, a new shipment of Saudi arms and military equipment arrived at the port to reinforce forces and militias loyal to President Ali Abdullah Saleh.
The Saudi role in Yemen is very clear. What was reported by the news agency about the Saudi military supplies to Yemen is not surprising. It's clear that the Saudi kingdom and regime are continuing to support the tyrant Ali Abdullah Saleh as well as other Arab dictators.
The Yemen Express website quoted witnesses saying that a new Saudi fleet of armored vehicles supplied by the Saudi kingdom a few months ago was seen leaving the port of Aden to Al Nasser base in the area of Arish on the outskirts of Hun in central Aden. The source added that it was the second fleet of armored vehicles and machinery to arrive in Yemen since the launch of protests demanding the downfall of the more than 3-decade-long rule.
The authorities of the Israeli occupation are planning to expedite the plan to evacuate all Bedouin communities from Area C in the occupied West Bank, which is under Israel's complete civilian and military control, and transfer them to nearby residential areas.
Observers say the plan aims to expand Israeli settlement activities in the area and connect the Maleh Abdumim settlement to the city of Jerusalem.
More details in this report by our correspondent Elias Karram in Jerusalem.
Mohammed Abu Duk was a young boy, not even 10 years old, when the Jahalin tribe was expelled from the Negev desert on the day of Palestine's Nakba, or catastrophe. Members of the tribe mainly settled on the eastern slopes of the Jerusalem mountains. Here they live a modest Bedouin life in tin plate homes. However, their quiet and simple life is being disrupted by the Israeli occupation's threat to evacuate them from the area.
Why do you want to make us leave and put these settlements here? This is land of the Negev. This is our land. It's your land? You, who came yesterday? Well, I've been here for 100 years. My father and grandfather and great-grandfather were born here. We will never leave. This is our land and we must stay here. We will remain here, steadfast, until Judgment Day.
Numerous indicators point to their impending eviction. The tribe is now surrounded by main roads, settlements, and army bases. In addition, fertile areas that provided pastures for livestock are being limited and closed. The pace of the closure is threatening their livelihoods and costing them heavy material losses.
They closed down all the Bedouins' mountains here, as you can see. All the Bedouins are in the same situation I'm in. There are no pastures at all. Go over there to the military base and you might not make it back.
Nearly 27,000 nomadic Bedouins live in the occupied West Bank. Most of them live in Area C, which is under complete Israeli control. Israel is seeking to gather these people in permanent residential areas within 3 to 6 years.
It is confirmed that settlements are illegal, so how is it that the original inhabitants of the land are transferred to settle the settlers? This goes against all international laws and is completely immoral.
The first threatened with evacuation is a group of 2,400 people living in Bedouin communities on the outskirts of Jerusalem. They will be relocated to a site near a large garbage dump in al-Azariya. Their areas are considered vital for the expansion of the Ma'ale al-Dumim settlement and other settlements towards the city of Jerusalem. Residents of these Bedouin communities say they fear they will experience another catastrophe. Uprooting them from this area not only threatens their individual futures, but also paves the way for an unprecedented settlement expansion that will permanently encircle the city of Jerusalem and isolate it from the occupied West Bank. Ilyas Karam, Al Jazeera, from the Jahalin tribe, east of Jerusalem.
We open with two significant announcements today. The Palestinian leadership has confirmed that it will go directly to the United Nations Security Council with the request for statehood recognition. This is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that he will represent the State of Israel in an address before the General Assembly next week. Here to fill us in with all the details is IBA's Ellie Wogelenter.
Yes, the Palestinians officially threw down the gauntlet today, challenging the U.S. to exercise its veto in the Security Council vote. Here's what the Palestinian Foreign Minister announced in Ramallah today regarding President Mahmoud Abbas's speech to the General Assembly next Friday.
The last sentence in his speech will say that after finishing, delivering the speech, he will present the official request of the State of Palestine to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, requesting that the State of Palestine will be admitted as a full member state in the United Nations. Our understanding that, when we submit the request to the Secretary General of the United Nations, he will pass that request to the President of the Security Council, and also to the President of the General Assembly. This is really our understanding. The procedure, I believe, that the Security Council will be the one who will deal with it, and so we expect that the Security Council will be busy dealing with the Palestinian application immediately afterwards.
Meanwhile, after weeks of deliberation, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced this afternoon that he too would address the General Assembly next week on Friday, the same day as Abbas, to discuss the Palestinian statehood bid, even as he also urged a resumption of peace talks. We believe that peace can be reached by negotiation, not by force, Netanyahu said. Israel doesn't usually get a fair hearing at the General Assembly, but I have decided to tell the truth to anyone willing to hear it. Today's announcement followed late-night meetings last night between Netanyahu and U.S. envoys Dennis Ross and David Hale, and then another meeting with EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton. None of the parties involved in the talks are being specific about what was discussed. It is not even clear whether the goal was to prevent the PA from going to the UN and asking for any type of statehood recognition, or whether the aim is to convince the Palestinians to bring to the UN a resolution that Israel could live with and which would form the basis for future negotiations.
We look at the developments on the ground in Syria.
6 months have passed since the start of the Syrian revolution against Assad's regime, and the killing machine is ongoing, claiming additional protesters demanding freedom. The opposition is mobilizing its supporters to take part in the Friday of Perseverance until the downfall of the regime. Thousands of Syrians responded to the call for what they named the Thursday to Renew the Pledge in massive demonstrations that swept across various Syrian cities and towns. Protesters renewed their insistence on continuing their revolution until the downfall of the regime, despite the violence committed by government forces. They are demanding international protection for demonstrators. Today did not differ from the previous days of protests. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said that 2 people were killed in the city of Homs in central Syria, and a third was killed in the coastal city of Latakia by security forces' gunfire. Activists uploaded images online of what they said shows the traces of blood of 10 workers on a farm in the city of Basra al-Harrir in Daraa province, who were killed by Syrian security forces. Activists also uploaded videos of a massive demonstration held during the funeral of soldier Ahmed Othman Ktaimesh, who was liquidated by security forces and the Shabiha after he refused to open fire on civilians in Homs. Meanwhile, the case of Lieutenant Colonel Hussein al-Harmoush still resonates. He was the first officer to defect from the Syrian army. After he disappeared from Turkey nearly 2 weeks ago, he appeared on Syrian state-run TV giving confessions. The opposition said he was threatened to do so. In exchange, Syrian opposition sources said it is likely that Harmoush was kidnapped by the Syrian intelligence without the Turkish authorities' knowledge. Meanwhile, a leader of the Free Syrian Army, which is comprised of defected officers and soldiers, held the Syrian regime responsible for the life of Lieutenant Colonel Harmoush.
We say to the oppressive regime that we swore to God and to the people that every time one of us is arrested and killed, thousands of us will take to the street. In front of the world, I hold the criminal regime responsible for preserving the life of the hero Lieutenant Colonel Hussein al-Harmoush. Release him immediately and hand him over to the Turkish authorities. Otherwise, our response will be harsh and it will shake your foundation and destroy your tyrants through specific operations by our brigades, targeting your whole military, security, and civilian leadership.
In a notable move in Istanbul, a Syrian National Council was formed with the aim of representing the revolution. This comes following consultations between several sides of the opposition inside Syria and abroad. In a press conference in Istanbul, those leading the council unveiled its formation, goals, and time frame. Among its goals are to work for the downfall of the Assad regime, maintain the peaceful nature of the revolution, and seek the establishment of a pluralistic, civil, and democratic state. The council is comprised of nearly 115 individuals, including 50 inside Syria. The council representatives called on a number of other opposition activists to join them.
Israel has evacuated its diplomatic staff from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Angry protesters rallied against the U.S. and Israel outside the American embassy earlier. They promised to break into the Israeli embassy later on Thursday.
Anti-US and anti-Israeli sentiments flaring up in the Middle East. Thousands of Jordanians have held protests against Washington and Tel Aviv in Amman. The demonstrators took to the streets to vent their anger at plans to resettle Palestinian refugees in Jordan.
They are advocating the agenda for an alternative state and the attempts to pressure Palestinian leaders and lavish them with positions and benefits in return for their concession regarding the right of return and the Palestinian cause.
The protesters also condemned the U.S. for promising to veto any Palestinian bid for UN membership and called for the expulsion of the U.S. and Israeli ambassadors from Amman. Across Jordan, anger is mounting against Israel. This following an attack on Israel's embassy in Egypt by thousands of protesters who were furious at Tel Aviv for killing Egyptian border guards. Israel has always been seen as an occupying entity in the Middle East since it was created with the help of Britain and other Western countries after World War II. And the US has since been a pariah among regional nations for having thrown its full weight behind Tel Aviv. Israel has waged several bloody and destructive wars against regional nations during its decades-long occupation.
The Israeli foreign minister's recent threats against Turkey have caused alarm across the region. Avigdor Lieberman has said Tel Aviv may back the terrorist group PKK against Ankara. Matt Fraser reports from Erbil.
The recent deterioration in the relations between Turkey and Israel led to the right-wing Israeli foreign minister Avigdor Lieberman telling a newspaper that he had planned meetings in Europe with PKK leaders in order to discuss ways of cooperating against Turkey. The PKK, which stands for the Kurdistan Workers' Party, is a left-wing militant group listed by much of the international community as a terrorist organization and which engages in armed conflict against the Turkish state for autonomy in the country's southeast. The PKK are based in the mountains of the semi-autonomous Kurdistan region in Iraq. Many in Turkey have long accused Israel of assisting the group, but this is the first time an Israeli politician has spoken publicly in such a manner. Mr. Lieberman later backtracked to the media, and the Israeli Prime Minister's office said that no such plans were in place.
To be honest, there is no such strategy that exists between the Kurds and Israel. No Kurds have this kind of relationship with Israel. That's why I find all this talk of cooperation doubtful. Such a relationship would not be formed in a day. We shouldn't be deceived by this offer and allow ourselves to be used by the Israelis as a pressure card against Turkey.
The local Iraqi Kurdish media has in recent days been full of reports alleging high-level meetings between Israelis and PKK leaders, but none of this can be confirmed. We spoke with Osman Öcalan, another former PKK general, and the brother of the imprisoned founder and leader of the PKK, Abdullah Öcalan.
When I was one of the leaders of the PKK, there was a man who wanted to organize relations between Israel and the group, but his support was not strong. After 2005, he was able to build some type of relations with Israel. But if there is any kind of cooperation, I don't think it is very open. It would be deeply hidden.
Meanwhile, Turkey admitted publicly that it is still considering a mass incursion into Iraqi Kurdistan, similar to the one that took place in 2008 against the PKK hideouts.
In Cairo, the trial of deposed Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak, Interior Minister Habib al-Adli, and 6 of their aides continues. They are facing charges of ordering the killing of protesters demanding the ouster of the president and his regime. It seems several victims' families do not believe this trial's verdict will bring them justice.
7 months after the tragedy, sadness is still apparent on the faces of Mohammed and his wife. Their son was killed on January 29th during the Egyptian Revolution by the police's gunfire. Hassan died in his father's arms.
We were in the taxi. The bullet penetrated a bag, the seat, then entered Hassan's back and came out of his chest and into the driver's seat.
Mohammed fears the killers will escape punishment.
There is no justice. There is no justice in the Egyptian judiciary. Not in the Egyptian judiciary, nor the armed council. Mubarak's policies are still here.
Lawyer Khalid Abu Bakr is defending 28 families. He believes the post-revolution judicial system is slowly being liberated from the former regime.
The regime of former President Mohammed Hosni Mubarak used to gain support from lawyers and judges. However, since the January Revolution, the judiciary has become somewhat independent.
The government permitted media networks to broadcast court procedures of the trial, but later reversed its decision.
Whether it's across the media, with cameras or without cameras, we know the issue will wither away.
My goal and hope was for the trial to be broadcast on TV so I could be, at the very least, reassured. But I feel like the Egyptian judiciary is back to its theatrics.
The Lawyers Guild is seeking to provide the testimonies of over 1,000 people. The testimonies won't be aired live, so Egyptians will have to accept the court's decision.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.